In the stories that shape the week here on RT International, half of all workers around the globe are at risk of losing their jobs as the richest people on the planet see their bank accounts boosted on the back of COVID-19. Immunity passports are being considered by Europe's top tourism officials to get economies rolling again, but the World Health Organization said the plan is flawed. And we take a look at May Day celebrations from around the world with a twist. In France, they were mostly limited to balconies and rooftops, but elsewhere, some did flout lockdown and social distancing rules, with dozens arrested. Good evening. You're watching the weekly rundown of top stories here on RT International. I'm Daniel Hawkins. Good to have you with us. Now, we begin this hour with the latest figures on COVID-19. The global pandemic is in a new month. Those confirmed coronavirus cases are still soaring, now surpassing 3.5 million. There is some hope, though. 1.1 million have recovered. The grim number you can see, though, in terms of fatalities now stands at more than 246,000. Well, nearly half of all workers across the globe are at risk of losing their jobs. That's the stark warning from UN experts. And although this crisis has been provoked by COVID-19, Caleb Maupin now explains why the labour market was already under threat.
The jobs of 1.6 million people are in jeopardy due to COVID-19 lockdowns around the world. Hours have been cut, incomes have decreased, unemployment is rising. But the problems did not start with the pandemic.
For millions of workers, no income means no food, no security, and no future. Millions of businesses around the world are barely breathing. They have no savings or access to credit.
The International Labor Organization points out that roughly half of the global workforce has a precarious existence, where their livelihoods, their access to food and health care and other necessities of life can be cut off at any moment due to problems in the market.
They often have poor access to healthcare services and have no income replacement in case of sickness or lockdown. Many of them have no possibility to work remotely from home. Staying home means losing their jobs, and without wages they cannot eat.
2 to 3.3 billion people function within what's referred to as the informal economy. They are self-employed or they have short-term contracts. Their wages have decreased by roughly 60% during the first month of the pandemic. For them, the pandemic is not just a time to stay home and relax. They have very real fears about how they are going to pay their bills, as the International Labor Organization predicts massive losses in income are ahead for them.
In terms of the economic and social effects of this pandemic, it discriminates massively. And above all, it discriminates against those who are at the bottom end of the world of work, those who don't have protection, those who don't have resources, those who don't have recourse to the types of things that we regard as the essentials of a normal life.
Not everyone is in the same boat amid the pandemic. A new study shows that the 500-plus U.S. billionaires have seen their combined wealth surge by roughly $282 billion, with 8 of them gaining $1 billion each since the beginning of the year. Meanwhile, the weekly jobless claims keep rising and rising, with roughly 30 million of them in the last 6 weeks. A Gallup poll shows that 1 in 7 Americans would avoid seeking medical treatment if they had some key symptoms of COVID-19, fever and dry cough, because they're afraid of medical costs, and it gets worse.
When framed explicitly as believing to have been infected by the novel coronavirus, 9% still report that they would avoid seeking care. Adults under 30, non-whites, those with a high school education or less, and those in households with incomes under $40,000 per year are the groups most likely to indicate they would avoid seeking out care.
That crisis in the economy is taking on a dynamic of its own, I would argue, and it's not just now being driven by what's happening with the virus. The slowdown was really quite obvious in the U.S. and advanced economies. You could see it in the commodity-producing economies, especially oil. That was already slowing down. The price was already declining. You could see it in global trade, which was barely growing, global GDP that was slowing. So it, the process was already underway, and it probably would have, unraveled in a much slower way. And clearly, though, the virus effect has precipitated an acceleration of the contraction. It clearly does discriminate. It is hitting the working class harder, and certain segments of the working class even harder.
While there may not be many big parades with red flags this May Day, it seems that the pandemic has made apparent many of the issues that working class organizations have been trying to highlight for so long. Caleb Maupin, RT, New York.